Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the DrEnderPickles Show. Today we have a interesting guest, a guest I've already had before, the first guest actually. And I didn't think that the first interview was a fair shot, so I wanted a second go at it with all this experience under my belt. I feel like it was deserved, it was earned. Today we have Jared2013. Hello, Jared.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going. So I'd like
Good.
to know, I'd like to know, right off the bat, how have you changed since the last interview that we had together, the first episode, and what made you kind of want to redo it now?
Well, when was the first episode? That was like 2018 or something.
Probably, if not earlier. I think it was 2018.
I think it was 2018 too, and that was during a time when I was in the midst of a huge feud with Imperium, and I was way too invested in the server. And I think that dialogue was just pretty much about my philosophy on the server rather than my actual experiences and stuff. And obviously, my philosophy as well has changed since then.
Yeah, and in what ways has it kind of changed since that interview? I mean, I guess we can go ahead and hit on some of the philosophical stuff now to get it out of the way.
Well, back then I was way too invested in the server, and I really didn't have a good understanding of what was appropriate and what was not, and I did many things that I regret that I'm not going to get into here. Um, but yeah, I think since then I've kind of calmed down and gotten away from the Minecraft drama, which is something that I was heavily involved in back then, regretfully. Um, yeah, I mean, I've just really taken a step back and looked at the big picture, realized that I shouldn't be behaving that way. You know,
Yeah, the years have had their way on you. They've
and
softened
now
you
I've
up.
matured, grown up.
So let's take it all the way back. Let's go back to square one. To innocent Jared, visitor Jared. How did you join, and where did you find this place?
So I actually played on a clone server before I joined TBGT, because those actually existed back in the day. It was something owned by a guy named Cody, and I joined that in like 2012, and basically did the same stuff that I've been doing on TBGT. I was going around griefing bases and stuff, and at the time I was like 10 years old. And eventually after the server kind of died down, shut down. And then one of the friends I'd made on the server, his name was Dr. Cash. He'd given me an account named Jared2013. It was originally just a public account. You know, they used to have on 4chan these large lists of username, password, and anybody could just log in and use the account. This was before migration. So Jared2013 was just a throwaway public account that somebody hacked. And he gave it to me because he used to collect those things. And I thought nothing of it. You know, I had numerous accounts from him. It was just one of many. But once I got into 2BGT, because that's where he directed me after the other server died, then I started using multiple accounts and building, specific personas for each one. And Jared 2013 was the one I designated as a griefer. And eventually that's the personality that just, overtook the rest, and that became my main account. Kind of like how Big Nick Zero, that's technically his account, but he uses the name XCC2, and everybody knows him by that.
Yeah, what was kind of the event that gave Jared more notoriety in the Dark Joe?
That's a good question. And I don't really know the answer to that. I feel like it was probably just the griefing. You know, you're not going to remember some builder's name, generally speaking, unless they're very good. And I certainly wasn't very good.
Yeah, and why
Um,
were you not griefing on main?
I did that so that I could still get into bases and stuff. At the time, I was obviously pretty invested in the server, so I was willing to do stuff like that. Um, yeah, I used to, just get into as many bases as I could and then blow them up on my other account.
Yeah, and like, at what point did you kind of take that step from a casual visitor who was just checking out the server to someone who might stay for a while? When did things kind of click?
When there was some drama involving Valkyria, I remember I was interested in the drama and I kept threatening Sato or Pyrobite or someone that I was going to come and blow Valkyria up. And that was pretty much the moment that I got really into it. And then since then, probably up until 2020, I've been rather consistent for like 7, 8 years.
Yeah, and like it's kind of strange that like in a way the reasons that we're both here is from trying to threaten Sato and like troll LARP Sato. That's interesting. Maybe there's some sort of
Yeah,
weird correlation there. Uh, I,
maybe there is. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it's because he kind of took himself seriously in a different way than most people. You know, he kind of played the server like it was a story in a way. Um, but
Well, I was too
he
young at
was
the
the
time to
OG
really understand
LARPer.
that.
Yeah.
He is the OG LARPer, that's true. Uh, I gotta say, go watch Bezel Passant's interview with Sato86 if it's still up, if it hasn't been taken down by YouTube yet.
Yeah, well, I don't see why it would. I mean, it's like an hour long. Did he say anything that would get it taken down?
No, but the thumbnail is like a monkey or something.
Oh, dude, he got so mad about that. That's actually an
I
interesting
know.
story. Right after that happened, he like raged really hard in my DMs that I made him a monkey in the interview.
Dude, you didn't have to do that though, like why?
Well, because everyone called him a favela monkey, and like that was like his nickname, and so I put him on as the monkey because just kind of troll him a little bit. Like it was a
I mean, what are
lighthearted,
they gonna do with
playful
my interview?
troll.
You're gonna use a fucking picture of Jared Fogle or something?
I mean, I did already draw you as Jared Fogle before, so it wouldn't be a stretch.
True, he
But
did.
no, I'm actually using a picture of like it's like a Guns N' Roses interview. So they look like rockers.
Oh,
They like
okay.
but like sad old retired rockers.
Dude, Axl Rose's voice. Oh man, he's really changed.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
I didn't
getting
know
off
you were
topic.
An Axl Rose fan. I'm
I'm
actually like
I'm
a
a fan
huge
of
Beatles
Guns N'
fan.
Roses. Yeah, I do like them.
How
I
do you go
like a
from
lot of
Guns N'
rock
Roses
music.
to Beatles?
Well, actually, that's a weird story, and it's not about TBGT, so I guess we're gonna go into this tangent. But for the vast majority of my life, I didn't listen to any music at all. It was like when I was 17, I got into Pink Floyd, and then from there, I just spent a, an inordinate amount of time listening to music and getting associated with it. And you know, yeah, Guns N' Roses just happens to be one of the ones on my list. I do like it.
Why is that music so important to you in so many ways?
That's a good question. I mean, why is it important?
I mean, why does it like why do those particular artists resonate with you? What about like the songs that they make, the music, all that kind of stuff is like
Well, I'll say
important to your
I
life?
like older musical artists because I find that they're often very intelligent, whether it's in the construction of their song or how they do their lyrics. It's unlike the stuff of today where they just kind of throw in whatever lyrics they want, and it's generally about the same stuff. It's like sex, violence, and drugs, and that just doesn't interest me. I like Pink Floyd's philosophical lyrics, or even the Beatles have some pretty philosophical lyrics at times, and it's very appealing to me, and
Why do you
the
okay?
sound of it as well.
And I don't take this question the wrong way, but why do you like think that why do you associate more with people who are older rather than people your own age? Do you think that you maybe you're more intelligent than people that are your own age or
No, I definitely think that there are many people that are very intelligent. Um, why do I associate with things that are older? I mean, keep in mind, I joined TBGT when I was 11 years old, and
yeah,
most
I
of the
mean
other people were not 11.
you
So
must have had to kind of blend in with the
I
older
certainly
crowd that was on
did,
the
yeah.
server.
And I guess that that's just some aspect that has remained with me. I just generally prefer being surrounded by things that are older. I feel it's more of an educational experience in many ways.
Why do you think you kind of were successful in like avoiding that cringe that could have come from being that young when you joined the server?
What makes you think I avoided it? I didn't avoid it. That stuff is just buried because it was fucking 5 years ago.
Well, what's some stuff that people probably haven't heard, some cringy stuff that you did that looking
Um,
back on it you think is kind of like funny or
So there's
cringy?
this video of Bran saying that, imitating me and saying, "I'm gonna kill myself for real this time," and that's a claim that I used to make when I was like 13. I was like, "Guys, I'm gonna kill myself for real this time," and that's pretty cringe. Some other stuff that I said that was cringe. I don't know, a whole lot of stuff that I probably can't repeat on air, but
I mean,
yeah.
do you think? And I don't, again, this is not like this is not trying to be a deep cut, but I mean, do you really think that like the server, in a way, was kind of like a way to kind of put your feelings out and to express your feelings in some sort of platform that you couldn't in real life?
Um, I don't know. I find that um, my feelings and whatnot from that age are very difficult for me to distinguish. It's kind of like I came home from middle school and got on this server with a bunch of adults and started bullying them. That was pretty much my experience for pre-June to BTT.
Did you do that in real life too? Like, did you like whenever you saw some adults in real life, or did you like bully them in real life?
No, no, I didn't bully adults in real life. But I mean, I wasn't a nice person to other classmates. I've definitely gotten into some fights and stuff in the past, you know.
I mean, did you get any fights that you've won?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay. So you were like a problem starter. Like
I wouldn't say that I was a problem starter.
were you that kid
I
that
was
everybody looks
relatively
out
quiet
for,
in
that everyone kind
class.
of keeps a side eye for? They're like, man, that kid's gonna do something stupid one day.
What do you say?
Were you that kid in school that everyone just kind of kept like a side eye for? They were like, man, I need to watch out for that guy. He's definitely gonna do something.
No, no, I wasn't that guy. Like, that's the kind of person that walks around with like chains in their belt or something. That wasn't me. I blended in, um, but I didn't really take shit from people. You know, I would defend myself. If somebody said something stupid, I would speak up. You know.
I mean, would you say you were kind of like a socialite, or more just kind of reserved, that you didn't really talk to many
No,
people
no,
besides
definitely
having
not a
fun?
socialite. Definitely not. I was pretty reserved. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I can definitely see that. But off of that topic, we're kind of going down a tangent with that. Who was kind of the first person that you met, and do you still keep in touch with them now?
Well, the first person I met on TBGT, that's a good question. I don't know, but the first friend I had on TBGT was Tristan. I Tristan. I obviously don't keep in touch with him anymore.
Yeah, and like why? How did you kind of meet Tristan in the first place? You said he was kind of like the first person that you really came in contact with.
Hmm. I believe he was at Spawn with Pyrobyte and some others, and I don't remember who died. I think he died or something. And I snuck down to Bedrock when nobody was looking, and I picked up his armor. And that was kind of the start of it. I think I messaged him from there or something. I don't know. My memory's kind of foggy
That's a
about that.
pretty interesting person to run into right from the bat. What was he doing when you met him?
Getting killed by somebody. I think he fell into Bedrock and died because this was like when Withers were relatively new on the server, so the large crater was
Was was he
relatively new
also
thing.
kind of new at the time as well, or had he already been doing stuff on the
He
server?
actually joined back in mid 2012, but I don't think he did much until 2013.
And what was kind of some of that big stuff that you guys got involved with during that
That he
time?
was, or that we were together.
I mean, kind of the first kind of the first big stuff that you two kind of collaborated on.
Probably the most significant thing was in 2014 we collaborated on griefing Oremonger's 2012 base. This was during the time when Javazon and Oremonger went around griefing a bunch of old, well-known bases, and it was me, Tristan, Pyrobyte, Jack the Ripper, Zarvier, and XCC2 and Stormtrooper. We all, I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. Yeah, I think it was just those people. We all went to Warmonger's base. Pop-Up had given us the coordinates. He had the coordinates from the Thunderhack or something, and we griefed it. And this is up on YouTube, I think. Um, that was the first big event, I'd say.
Yeah, and like, where did the disdain for Ormonger come from in the first place? I mean, I know he was a
That's where
huge
it came
chat
from.
guy, but
That's where it came from.
just the lag
So before he
machines.
was known as like this, what was it, social justice warrior or whatever personality, he was just known as the guy that griefed a bunch of old people's bases. So we kind of converged on his base and we blew it up. And from that point on, all those people hated Ullmonger.
Yeah, and did it ever go too far at one point? Do you think that conflict with Ormonger? Because I know Clyde made that video and all that. That I mean, I don't think it actually happened, but it was kind of like a troll. Like, what was the context around Operation Ormonger?
I wasn't too involved in that. That was mainly a Tristan and Clyde thing. They were the ones that had the real beef with him. But they didn't actually go to his house. Obviously, they just knocked on some random door. I think Clyde did. Um, I mean, I don't know how far that really is. They never even doxed him or anything. They never did.
Do you think that? I mean, do you think that Ormonger thought that that was actually his house?
I don't know. I can't say because I don't know what his house looks like. I don't
I
know if
mean,
that
yeah.
video is still up on
I'm
YouTube.
just not sure if he had like a very vocal reaction to it, and was under the impression that they actually came to his house.
Well, if you want to know the truth, Oldmonger was a really fun person to bait. I'm sure that's kind of why they liked provoking him, because his reactions were always like several paragraphs long and accusing other people of wrongdoing and completely denying his own responsibility for pretty much anything. Um, the fact of the matter is that he's got Asperger's or something, and you know, evidently people back then liked to mess with people that had that condition.
I mean, do you think that most people on 2B2T have some sort of mental illness, though? I mean, including
No,
yourself?
no, definitely not. I'd say probably back in the day, there was a higher percentage that had some kind of mental illness. But nowadays, it's just, your typical 12-year-olds that are watching FitMC. These are the same guys that are on TikTok and Instagram and, all that stuff. They're just normal guys, normal kids. But back then, you had a very different audience.
Yeah, how's that audience changed in your opinion? When was the big shift in the demographic?
Well, I mean, it's not only 2BTs that's changed. You gotta understand, even to 4chan, even if supposedly, like, we had 4chaners come back onto 2BGT right now, it would still basically remain more or less the same as it is right now, because the demographic across those platforms has changed fundamentally in the same time too. Um, the people that inhabited 4chan back then was mostly mid to late teenagers, 20-year-olds, and really just weird people, like people like you described that were kind of loners, and they would be off in the corner and people would say stuff about them. I feel like that was kind of the audience that 2BQT had back then, as did 4chan. Nowadays, it's, just your typical kids.
I mean, do you miss that demographic, or do you think it's kind of changed for the better? I mean, do you think the change was kind of not
I
that
would
bad?
say that I think the change was inevitable. Even if 2BQT didn't, garner this level of popularity, the fact that Minecraft has been taken in this direction means that 2BQT would have inevitably become inhabited by children at some point or another.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, you joining as a child yourself. I mean, do you regret joining that young, joining to be that 2T at such a vulnerable age?
that's a difficult question. Do I regret it? I don't know if I can say I regret it or I don't regret it, because I don't know what the alternative would have been.
I mean, do you think that this affected you in some sort of way, being involved in this community and being this passionate about it at such a young age?
I'd say that in some ways it affected me negatively, in other ways it effectively affected me positively. I definitely developed a thick skin because people were constantly, insulting each other on the server. Um, and I think that's a good thing. In the bad way that affected me was in 2018 when we did the original interview. I was just way too invested in it, and that was, an unhealthy level of investment, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, let's talk about a little bit about that then. 2018, obviously, you kind of had the whole Huggy Town situation going on. You had people that were, you had got people that were inciting Imperium, Infrared, groups like that. What was kind of your, when did that trail start, that project start, and what did it kind of lead to?
Well, you were involved from the start because it was the seventh incursion, and I remember that there were people in the incursion, or that should have been participating in the incursion, that were in Imperium's voice channel, and we we discussed that you should get in there and just see what's going on. It wasn't meant to inside, but some people figured it out or something, and they thought that you were insiding for me, and so they pulled out of the incursion. Imperium did,
Oh yeah, I don't
and
even remember
then
that.
after that happened, there were still some stragglers left behind, like Jordan L666, and he was a high-ranking member of the incursion. And I was like, fine, if they want to leave, then we'll just continue doing our thing. And that's what we did. This was the incursion reloaded or whatever. And at some point, Jordan decided it was a good idea to terminate the Incursion 7 Discord. He banned everybody or something. And at that point, I was like, wow, these guys really want to pick a fight with me, so I guess they're going to get it. And for the next year and a half or so, there was just constant back and forth fighting between me and Imperium.
Yeah, what was some of the fallout of that? What was some of the stuff you guys did to Imperium members to really piss them off?
Well, I'm not going to get into the , details of it because it gets probably not very good. But I got a lot of insiders into the group, and then I expanded from their group to other groups like Infrared, as you mentioned, and even the Spawn Masons. Well, to be truthful, I was actually inciting people back in 2017 because I had a warship full in the Spawn Masons back in 2017. But anyway, for Imperium, I basically did the same thing. I got insiders in there. I got pretty good at it too. And I was able to grief probably the majority of Imperium bases that have ever existed. And as for Infrared, I managed to get myself an administrator position in that group, and I just deleted it. Just deleted the entire Discord, and that was the end of Infrared.
Yeah,
That was my
and
Christmas 2018 thing.
why do you not want to get into some of the harsher details about the conflict with Imperium? Why do you think that it reached a line that you don't even want to discuss it?
Well, I mean, obviously, to the more astute viewers, talking about doxing, it got into doxing, and that's something that I regret. I think it was a waste of my time. I think it was inappropriate to take things into real life, and I'm not just saying that because I've been doxed now. Have had these thoughts for probably about a year, because I haven't doxed anybody in probably a year and a half or something now, and I don't want to go back. I'll tell you a little bit about before that doxing was so prevalent. You know, it was just here and there. People were doxing each other here and there. It was a rather uncommon thing. But with the Imperium drama, it really kicked off. And now we see today doxing is just super common.
Yeah, do you feel
But
like
it
you
wasn't always like
contributed to
that.
that in some sort of way? That doxing
Can you repeat
culture?
that?
Do you feel like you contributed to that culture in some way of people just so
Oh,
frivolously doxing
absolutely.
as a way for
Absolutely. Yeah.
revenge?
Yeah, I definitely took it too far. And that was really the start of it. The doxing that's so prevalent nowadays wasn't like this until late 2018 when we started having this conflict between me and Imperium.
When
Specifically
was
me and Imperium. It wasn't really the other groups. Like Infrared, there was
yeah.
barely any doxing from Infrared. Um, but yeah.
So when did you dox someone for the first time? When did you realize that that was a way to really piss people off?
When did I dox someone for the first
I
time?
mean, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, 'cause I want to know, where did this start? Where did this pattern start? I think that's the best way to figure
The
out
first
why it
person
kept
I
going.
probably doxed was actually I shouldn't say the name or anything. I'll just say when. It was gee, a long time ago, way before June. I'll tell you that. But it was very rare. Um, I'd say probably 2014, 2015.
And
In
what kind of
2016 it ramped up.
led up to doing that? Why do you think that was a good idea to pursue it in that way?
Um, I don't know what really drove me in that direction, but that was at a time when doxing was really such a casual thing. Like Popov used to post in the chat, "Peter is raging," and similar things. It was not meant to harass him. Certainly, Popov was not going to go and harass him in real life, but just to like tease him in the chat. It wasn't malicious, but it became malicious in 2018
Yeah, it
and
definitely took a
2019.
turn. Oh yeah, for sure, especially during 2018.
I'd say it really ramped up in 2019. 2019, what a mess! What a messy year that was.
I mean, who would you say contributed to a lot of that in 2019, in your opinion?
The ramping up of the doxing,
Yeah.
Imperium and myself, the only culprits. There were only two people that were doing it. I mean, it was me and Emperor.
What are your thoughts on Emperor specifically and his kind of retaliation to all this that was going on at the time?
Um, I feel like he put up a good fight. Um, I'm glad he moved on from TBTT. That's all I have to say about him. I don't hold any ill will towards anybody. Um, he did put up a good fight, and I think that we had some good times.
Okay,
Even even
who was worse, Emperor or Nerds in your opinion? Who's higher?
who's a worse?
Yeah, who's lower on the scales for you?
Define worse. What do you mean by
I
that?
mean, well, worse as in like more of a challenging enemy. Who was more of a challenging enemy for you?
Um, that's a difficult question because both of them are like really different. Um,
Well, okay, we'll say who is a more of a challenging enemy and who was just more toxic. We'll split it up.
Another challenging question. Um, I personally feel if we're going to talk about like who's like a worse person, I can give you an answer for that. But who is a worse enemy? I don't know. I mean, Have I succeeded in both cases? No. I don't think I've succeeded in either case. I certainly didn't succeed in exposing the no-comma stuff. I mean, marginally, but not really. And I didn't succeed in taking down Imperium either, but I certainly gave them a headache.
It definitely
So I
does
don't
make
know how to
sense.
answer
Yeah.
that question.
I mean, I
I don't
guess
know
that's
how to
fair.
answer that question.
Yeah.
But if you want to know my opinion about who's a worse person, I definitely think Emperor is a worse person. For the simple reason that he was willing to go incredible lengths to get revenge.
What
Um,
were some of those
Unlike
lengths he
Nerds.
was willing to go to?
What are some of those lengths? I believe he brags about having reported me to the FBI, submitted a false tip or something, um, and he literally paid people to try to dox me at some points. Um, and those are lengths that I feel even back then were a bit much. Paying somebody to go out of their way and do that.
Yeah,
But anyway,
and
I
that
feel like he's moved on from it, so I'm not going to hold that against him. It's been years since that happened.
yeah, that's fair. Do you think that FBI tip kind of led to people thinking that that was you who got jailed in 2018? That whole jail fiasco that was going on.
um, I don't think anybody ever believed it. I don't think anybody for a second believed it, but they wanted to circulate it because, if they could associate me with something like that. And that was, by the way, I understand that like everybody calls each other pedos nowadays, but that was the beginning of it. February 2019, when they found this random article from some guy who was arrested for pedophilia, and they tried to pin that on me and say it was me. That was the beginning of all that pedo shit that we have nowadays. Um, but nobody ever actually believed it. I don't think even for a second anybody in Imperium genuinely believed that that was me. They just wanted to associate me with something that was bad, so they can tell everybody, like, look, this is Jared. He's associated with this thing that we find disgusting. So it was just a bad press move, and I'd say that it worked pretty well for 6 months or something until everybody forgot about it.
Yeah, and speaking of people leaving, as you were talking about Emperor leaving earlier, what you have a very common phrase that people kind of associate with you. I'm quitting for real this time. Is that kind of like a troll, or like is that
That's based
has that
on
been
some stuff
serious
that I
every
said
time that
back
you has
then.
that been serious every time you've left?
Um, Well, as you know, I was overly invested in TBGT at certain points, and specifically during like incursions. Because I remember I said that a few times during incursions because I really overextended myself and spent way too much time on the server. Um, and even back then, like before June, I was spending just way too much time and got way too invested. And there's a certain point when I realize that I'm too invested and I try to pull back, but I extend too far in the other direction. It's kind of like going between the two extremes. Either I'm really invested or I'm really disconnected. So whenever I got to a certain point, I would say, I need to step away. I'm quitting for real. And then I would be back like a week later or something, but at least I would have cooled off and kind of lowered that bar a little. But then over time, it would get more and more until I say again, I'm quitting. But that didn't happen, a year ago or whenever I genuinely did step away.
Yeah, and what's kind of your opinions on people that actually leave, like Sato and Pyrobite, leaving the community for good, no matter what the context of it is, like, do you ever see yourself doing something like that anytime soon?
Um,
Quitting for real?
that's a good question. I mean, truthfully, I've barely played since like 2020. I've barely been online. I've been in the community at certain points and for specific intervals, but I've also taken like multi-month breaks. Um, I do see myself stepping away. I see that um, there's a trend developing that I'm just in general spending less time in this community, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, I guess eventually the answer is yes.
Yeah, and speaking of your time in the community, time on 2B2T, you kept a diary in game for a very long time that actually
Not
got
a very
got
long
leaked.
time, a couple months.
Yeah, that got leaked publicly. How did that happen? Did you anticipate it on going public? What was kind of the context around that?
So that's a funny story. What happened was I was griefing Imps, the original, and I discovered a chest full of enchanted glass. This was the only chest on the server where there was enchanted glass. And I was like, holy shit, it's enchanted glass. So I emptied the contents of my ender chest into some, little chested area that was away from Imperator's base. And I put all the enchanted glass in my ender chest. It was less than a full chest full at the original time. And then Jack the Ripper comes by. I don't know how many months later. Maybe it must have been January 2016 or something. Jack the Ripper and Silver Crown King come by. They do some exploration. They manage to find my little stash. And it was Jack the Ripper who found the book and eventually published it. So obviously I didn't anticipate it being leaked, but it didn't have anything particularly personal in it. It was kind of just a log of what I was doing on the server. And it also kept track, I believe, of the symbol that I started using. Because remember, this was like before Discord and stuff, and before banners even. Actually, no, it wasn't before banners, but banners had yet to be adopted widely on the server. And I had this symbol that I used to put down at specific places that I griefed, so that people would log in and they would know who was responsible for it. And that's something that I've semi-maintained to this day. I sometimes use that symbol, but not always. Yeah, does that answer your question?
I mean, yeah, mostly, yeah. What was kind of were you ever embarrassed by the contents of the diaries? Like, was there anything in there that you kind of were hoping nobody would see?
No, I have far better things to be embarrassed about.
Like what?
Like me singing Frozen as a 16-year-old, and you should put that link in the description, by the way, so everybody can check it
Yeah, that
out.
was actually one of my questions I was going to ask. How
Was
many?
it really me? Yes, it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, you sung a lot of songs that are out there. There's a good bit that are out there. Green Day, the Frozen
That's
songs,
right.
of course. Are there any more songs that you did that aren't released or that aren't public?
Are you asking me for like the secret unreleased Jared
The
songs?
Vault songs. I need to
The
enter
whole
the Jared Vault.
Yeah, don't worry. There will be a 2031 Jared 2013 Get Back project. We're gonna fucking go over the footage
The lost
and
footage.
release the
We'll
songs.
get Peter, a different Peter to edit that.
No, actually, I don't think there are any lost songs. Actually, no, there might be one. There might be one that X0 failed to upload, but I don't even have it anymore.
Yeah, you know what that one is though.
I have no idea, honestly. All I know is I was 16 at the time, and it was before my balls dropped, man.
Who got you to do those? Who gave you the idea to sing those songs?
Someone did it as like a dare. They're like, "I dare you to do this," and I was like, "Okay," and I did. Do I
Nice.
regret it? I don't regret it. No, I think that it's one of those things that's helped thicken my skin in the community. I feel like there's very little at this point that can really get to me on a personal level because
Well,
of these things that I've done.
speaking of things that could possibly get to you on a personal level, nice segue, thank you. I'd like to talk about your relationship with Nerds Inc. and the Tyranny, how it kind of started, how it evolved, and what it ultimately led to.
Sure. So, let me give a bit of background. Pretty much everybody in Nerds Inc. has a mental illness. Pretty much everybody. I'd say
Interesting,
every single
interesting.
one. And that's important to understand because, while I was friends with these guys way back when they were teenagers and they were developing their personalities, I was not friends with them, by the point of adulthood. Um, and it was really Tristan that actually got under my skin and, made me leave the group. Well, I guess I better tell how it all started, how Nerds Inc. started. It started just me and Taylor. Taylor 112. We were the founders of Nerds Inc. Tristan was the third member. Pop was the fourth. Clyde was the fifth. Bran was the sixth. And then Tuna and Frickin kind of came at the same time. And I don't know what happened from there because that's after I left. Um, but it was fun. We had a good time for the year or so that it was particularly good. And there were periods when the group kind of died and people were only posting political memes and stuff, mainly Pop Bob and basically just Pop Bob was posting political memes. But they were genuine friends for a number of years before June and slightly after June. I think the longest lasting friend I had from that group was Friggin, and I was friends with him until 2021, early 2021. But what really led me to leave the group, in addition to it being basically dead in late 2018, which is when I left, Tristan had gone behind my back, and this is something that he does all the time if you know him. He goes behind people's backs and he talks shit about them. This is kind of why I call the group Backstab Inc. Because, if you know as much as I do about the group, you'll know that they're constantly backstabbing each other. I don't want to get into the details of why that's the case, but just take it as a matter of fact. These guys, on the surface, they're like this unit, but internally, there's all sorts of different problems. All sorts of different problems. And I know you know about that.
What makes it a situation that you can't get into? What details make it a little more?
I simply feel it's inappropriate to intrude on people's personal, stuff, like relationship stuff with women, as
So
you
are
know.
you saying that someone in Nerds came after somebody else's relationship?
I don't want to get into the details of that. I know you'd love to have it on your podcast, but I'm sorry, I just can't. So getting on with the point, why did I leave? Tristan, he was, shit talking me behind my back, and that's something he does. And I was like, well, I found it, of course, and I was like, what the hell is this? I'm still in the group, and I just felt that was really an intrusion. I felt that was really inappropriate of him to go behind my back and say these things about me. So I left. I think it was like August 2018 or something that I left, and then I don't remember. I think Clyde invited me back a bunch of times, and I rejected. And I said something like, "You guys aren't my real friends," and that turned out to be true. They weren't my real friends because at some point they basically all betrayed me. Every single one of them, except the new guys like Papa J and Ox22. They are not really involved in this drama. They've basically and Liar as well. They're all too new for this drama, so they weren't a part of it. And I don't hold them accountable.
Yeah, and like, how long were you kind of in on NoCom and some of the stuff that was happening within Nerds Inc? And
I
I
was
know you
not
can
given the
speak towards
details. I mean, you have to understand, I'm not a programmer. That was another thing that drove us apart. The fact that I'm not a programmer, I didn't have much to talk about with them. They were all programmers in that group. So I wasn't involved specifically in NoCom. I know Kino, he was a member of Nerds Inc. He was involved in NoCom at the time. I was provided with probably hundreds of coordinates from NoCom. Numerous of the bases that I griefed that were like notable bases were NoCom bases, and I got those coordinates from Frickin'. So I was well aware that there was an exploit going on, probably for, I don't know, 2 years or something. And I was just fine accepting the coordinates. I mean, Frickin' gave me various pieces of information over time, but because he and I were close at the time, or I wouldn't say close, but we were friendly with each other, I didn't save any of that stuff. He provided me with screenshots from the database and stuff like that, and he provided me with various other exploits. Like, I remember back in 2019, he had this exploit that allowed you to have infinite priority queue. That was, just one of many things that he confided in me back then. And of course, it no longer works. But yeah, I was pretty well aware of the happenings in there. And in fact, I won't get into the details of this, but I've had several insiders in Nerds Inc. since I left anyway. So I've been kept pretty up to date on what happens in that group, at least the important stuff.
And is it true that Tristan trades feet pics for NoCom cords, or was doing that when they had the exploit?
Yeah, so yes, that's correct. He traded coordinates, and you have to understand these things were like they grew on trees. Like they had no shortage of coordinates that they could sell. The fact that he was giving it in exchange for feet pics is just a reflection on his personality. He's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, what do you think of his personality? What other ways has he been a weirdo online?
I don't want to get into the details of that either, but what I'll say is Tristan has social problems. Back when I was in Nerds Inc., I used to try to give him advice about how to deal with these social situations. And just to give you perspective of the kind of person he is, he doesn't really separate online from real life. He got banned from one of his real life university's group channels or something because he was being anti-Semitic. So just to give you a perspective of who he really is, he's autistic. And many other people in the group are also autistic. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as a matter of fact. Like they have high level of skill in computer stuff, but socially they really struggle.
Yeah, and do you think this kind of animosity with nerds is what ultimately led to them doxing you? I mean, they did have your
Oh,
information for a very long time.
absolutely.
Right?
It was just the two that went, too far on Oldmonger. It was just Tristan and Clyde that doxed me, as far as I know. Well, to be truthful, when I was still in Nerds Inc., it was Papa who doxed me. But at the time, of course, it was fine, and I don't think he was the one that shared that information with them. But I was originally doxxed by Pop Up many, many years ago
Yeah, what
because
information
I
did you
trusted
give
it.
them in the first place that led to this?
Oh, I trusted them with all sorts of things. You have to understand we were friends for such a long time. Way before Nerds Inc., I was friends with Tristan. I was friends with Halo. I wasn't friends with Clyde. I didn't like Clyde. I didn't want him in the group. But I was friends with Bran. I was not friends with Pop Pop necessarily, but we were friendly for a couple of years. And we played Dota 2 together and some other stuff. And Tuna as well. I was friendly with pretty much that entire group for a good amount of time. So I trusted them. And, they trusted me with their personal information and stuff.
Do you think getting betrayed by people on such a personal level affected your trust in friendships that you had after that? Like, did you feel that, like, going forward you were incapable of forming meaningful friendships that weren't built off of some sort of manipulation?
No, definitely not. I know. I mean, I've had many real life friends since then, but I do not have many online friends since then. I've not bothered to become friends with many new fags. None, in fact. Not a single new fag I'm friends with. I developed one friendship, I remember, with an old player named Int404. You should have him on the podcast, by the way. He's pretty cool.
Is this the
Um,
guy that created Imperator Space? We're talking about Imperator.
Int404.
Oh,
He created
Int.
some.
Okay.
He owned some like really cool base that lasted from 2012 or something all the way until 2020. So it was the oldest base on the server for a
Oh,
while.
nice. What base was it?
It doesn't actually have a name, I don't think. It was just kind of called the Lost City because it was lost for a fucking long time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Go. Oh, what
yeah,
were
to
you
answer
saying?
your question,
Yeah.
no, I've had no difficulty forming friendships and stuff since then. I just haven't bothered to deal with new players. That's all.
So, kind of going off of the whole basis thing, you had this obsession with Space Valve. Tell me a little bit about this. How did this obsession with Jack and Space Valve begin? And what did it
Well, I'll
ultimately lead to
disprove
with
this.
with him?
I'll disprove this. I've never had an obsession with Spaceball
Well, I
or
mean,
Jack the
didn't you
Ripper.
grief both of
I
his
griefed all
bases?
three of them, but that doesn't mean
Okay.
I was obsessed. That was like a matter of chance. I happened
Well,
to be there at the right time in
I used
2015
obsessed loosely. You know, kind of just why did you keep griefing him over and over?
because I had access to the coordinates and wanted to do so. I mean, I was invited to grief Space Valkyria 3. This was mid 2019. Um, I was invited to grief Space Valkyria 2. That was 2016. And I was invited to grief Space Valkyria 1. That was 2015. It's just a matter of chance. There could be a Space Valkyria 4 or something being built right now. And I'm probably never going to get the coordinates to that, so I'm probably not going to grief it. And I'm not going to go after it either, because I don't have any quarrel with Jack. It was actually Tristan and Clyde that had the quarrel with Jack.
I mean, do you feel partly responsible for him not playing the server anymore? Do you think this ultimately led to him not wanting to play on the server after all this?
Yes. I'm not going to elaborate. I'll just say yes.
Do you feel bad about that? I mean, do you wish that in retrospect you probably wouldn't have targeted him so much?
I don't feel bad about it. No, I mean, truthfully, I think that the fact that he doesn't play the server is probably a good thing. Anybody who's quit the server at this point, given the current state of 2B2T, and has me to blame for that, I think that they should thank me because 2B2T is in a terrible state, and nobody should be wasting their time on it.
Then why are you still here?
What do you mean? I don't play 2B2T.
I mean, I would say being involved in the community is almost just as bad. That's
I don't
really the
think so. I
majority
mean,
of
even
it.
Jack the Ripper is in the community. Jack the Ripper's in that no life Discord, isn't he?
I
But
mean,
he doesn't
yeah, but
play.
not really in like the actual 2B. That's a completely different thing. That's a completely different series.
Well, if you want to know, I'm in 4 Discords total, of which one is unrelated to 2B2T, and then 3 are for 2B2T stuff. That's on this specific Discord account, which I also have designated specifically for 2B2T stuff. So I'm not too involved. I'm certainly nowhere near as involved as I was back in 2018. I think I managed it at a fine level, and I don't think that I'm playing the server or involved in the drama or anything like that. In fact, I don't even know about the drama. I don't know who's involved. I don't know what goes on, and I don't want to.
Well, speaking of drama, the 2B2T wiki has been a huge focus of drama over the course of your time on 2B. What can you say about your initial involvement in it and what went wrong in the first place and kind of how you see it going now?
Well, the first thing I did when I joined the 2B2T wiki is I nuked the entire thing and got it banned from um, the original platform it was hosted on. I can't remember the name of. Fandom, I think. Actually, I
Why?
don't think I was the one that got it banned, but I think that there were others that came after that posted like terrible NSFW stuff, and that's what got it banned. But in late 2017, I nuked the entire thing. That was the first thing I did on the wiki. And then once Mirahez came around, I assisted in little ways, and I created the other alternative that I own still. Um, I've contributed a lot to the content on the wiki. I created the notable players list. I've created numerous articles for the wiki, and I've also contributed a lot to the administration. The current 2B2T wiki Discord is something that I created, um, and I also believe that I started the event which led to ousting the previous administration. I think Joey Coconut will dispute that and say that it was all him, but in fact, it was when I joined the Discord and started getting people together that we started, to really push on the old administration, and then eventually we got them out.
Yeah, and is
Um,
that where a lot of your beef with Joey comes from, or was it something that happened before?
no, Joey wasn't so toxic at the time. Joey, I don't really want to fuel the fire or anything, but I'll just say about Joey that he obviously has made a name for himself on the server, but he was a very different person back in 2017, and he's really, um, I feel like he's really gotten too invested in it, and I feel like he cares too much about how he's perceived by other people. Um, I feel like some of the decisions he's made are very inappropriate. Like, for instance, recently he responded to something I said about the wiki, and he included some paragraph about some old drama. Like, he was saying that I have been rude to him for a year and his friends too, or something, which I just felt was really an unprofessional thing to do. And of course, I think I shared publicly the logs of me speaking with the other administrators in that wiki, and a lot of the stuff that they said was just very, very unprofessional. So, whatever. I don't hold any ill will towards Joey, even despite all that. Um, obviously he's a somebody that belongs to the community. He somebody that's made a name for himself, and that's great. He owns a couple of groups or something. Congratulations, I guess.
I guess nice. So kind of along that line, how did you end up getting chords to block game Jerusalem? That's something I'm interested in hearing.
I manifested the coordinates, and I showed up one day. That's
Oh
all I'll
wow,
say.
did you walk outside with your moon rocks and channeled the manifest energy?
Something like that, sure. Yeah, I just showed up one day. That's all you need to know, and then I blew it up.
Interesting, interesting.
Rather, I didn't
So
blow it
you
up,
don't
but
want
I gave
to
you the coordinates.
so you have a unrevealed leaker.
Um, I have many, many unrevealed leakers.
Are they always going to stay anonymous? I mean, are there any people
No,
that have
no.
griefed that you can talk about that you haven't before that have leaked to you?
Well, that I haven't talked about before. I mean, I've spoken a bit about Fuffer. Fuffer was the only girl in the Spa Masons for a while. She was worshipful, the highest rank in the Spa Masons, and she was my insider.
Oh,
And that
nice.
was a fun time
What did
because
that lead to with Spawn Masons? What was kind of some of the stuff that you were able to get up to because of that?
I nearly took the group down. Like, I really fucking pushed it to the edge. I grouped pretty much every single Spawn Mason base that existed at the time, and I showed up constantly to their meetings every single week and blew up the lodges before they started. So I really did a number on them back then.
When did they catch on that Fuffer was leaking?
Never, not until she quit. Not until after she quit, and I revealed it.
Oh wow. So they just had no idea the entire time.
I mean, some of them probably had suspicion, but she was the only girl in the group. You gonna ban the only girl in the group? Of course not.
So okay, how were you getting this information out of her though? Was she just blindly leaking or like?
No, she wasn't blindly leaking, and in retrospect, it was very obvious because she attended several meetings on one of my alt accounts. But whatever. Um, no, we were friends. We talked about philosophical topics together, and that's kind of what
Of
led
course,
to
yeah. That's
that
so
relationship.
romantic.
It's not romantic at all. She's a decade older than me, dude.
Whoa. Well, getting to kind of that. that realm. How did you meet Halt Account? That's what I'm interested in hearing. When did that start? Because obviously you're
Yeah.
very
So
protective.
yeah, I'll never forget the first word that I said to Halt Account in 2018. I called her a faggot, and that's how it started.
I see. I see. Is that true though?
It's absolutely true. I mean, she'll vouch for it. I was very toxic to her at the beginning.
Yeah. When did things kind of become serious? Was initially was she like genuinely like I don't want anything to do with you, and at some point that did that change?
I'm not gonna get into the details of that.
None. You don't want to get into any details about this.
I don't want to get into the details about it. All you
Uh,
need to know is that there's a bunch of people out there that are seething. That are seething about this relationship that I have with
yeah. Like, what's why? Why?
her. Because she's very good. She's very smart, and she behaves very well. I'll say that
Do
much.
you think
She's liked by
that
everybody.
outside of the fact that obviously you care about Halt, do you think that that relationship has come in handy in certain situations?
No, I don't use her to get information about Nerdzing or whatever. That's inappropriate for a
I don't know
relationship.
about that, Chief. I don't know about that one. I feel like that's definitely happened at some point, if not in a literal sense, in some sort of way. I mean, she was in
The
Nerds for
only
so
stuff
long.
she and I have discussed that I won't talk about is she's in a private little group with Paula and Frickin'. It's just those three. And I don't approve of her being there. I don't like those people. I don't fucking like Pop Pop, and I don't like Frickin'. So
What
we've
do
on
they
occasion
do?
discussed.
What do they do in correlation to her that makes you not like their presence?
They fucking breathe. That's what they do. I don't like them being there anywhere in her vicinity because everybody else in Nursing has hit on her. I suspect that they are too.
Yeah, and like, what do you think about people that kind of judge your relationship with her from an outsider point of view? Do you think they're justified in thinking that maybe it's a little bit wacky, or like, do you guys just have something that, um, you know, is that people won't understand?
Um, I mean, yes, I know people won't understand it. Like, probably people probably think I'm incapable of showing emotion or something. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, more of like a people looking from an outside point of view into your relationship with Halt might see it as a little bit strange. The way you two interact with each other, it's not very. It's so traditional that it's so different from how relationships are perceived now. I guess in a
Well,
societal point of view.
that's just how we do it. You know, that's just
Yeah, and
happens
what?
to be the case that
Why?
both of us have that preference.
Yeah, how did that? How did that kind of come about? How did you two realize that you both kind of wanted the same thing?
Um, well, I mean, I don't think I should answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. No comment. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So tell me a little bit about your relationship with Alice
Um,
before
I'm
Halt
not going to
Account.
answer that question. I'm not going to answer that question either. I mean, that was like a that was many years ago and lasted like less than a month.
Why was it
I don't want to
so
talk about it.
important in the 2B2T community? Why do you not want to talk about it? I feel like that's more of a
Why
reason
is it
to.
important? Because this fucking guy Blake goes around talking about it all the time as if it's some big significant event, but in truth, it wasn't. You know, this is just something that he knows. I don't really want to get into the whole Blake discussion because that's really a topic unto
Oh, you
itself.
already cut me off there. That was literally on my
No,
lineup. Screw
I
you.
know. I know. I don't want to
Wow.
get into it because you know the stuff that you're asking is like stuff that involves so much drama that I don't want to bore the listeners having to
Are you?
hear about.
I'm bored. Are you serious? You already know I was gonna ask the hard hitting questions. You already know I was gonna take it there.
You don't want to hear about me having to elevate my mailbox to like 7 feet in the air or something. You don't want to hear about that.
So he couldn't reach it. Yo,
Because
that was,
he's like
dude.
5 foot.
No, I think he's less than that actually. He's really short. Have you seen that
We're,
picture
we're
of
not going to get
him?
into
Have you
this.
seen
We're
that
going to talk
picture of
about
him
dogs alive here.
with the foxtail? Have you seen that
I
picture?
don't want to talk about the fucking foxtail. I don't want to talk about Blake. Okay, I don't want to talk about any of that. All I'll say is that the whole thing about Alice, it was like fucking 5 years ago, literally 5 years ago. Blake just happens to know about it because I told him some like scarce details or
What
something,
does it even
and
mean though? Yeah, what's even the context of it? Because I didn't even know what the situation is. He just uses it so loosely.
Dude, he goes around talking shit about me all the time. He knows, like, the most random facts, like, you know, Jared has green eyes. Ooh, that's a dox information.
Yeah, why
Um,
is he schizophrenically obsessed with you?
Dude, he named himself after Clyde. You know, B1, AK, 3I, that's no coincidence.
Yeah, he was microdosing a lot for a really long period of time there, where he was just kind of like falling down this like mental degradation, and I guess that's
I don't
ultimately
want to
what
talk
lead
about
to
it.
yeah that situation. So
I don't, I don't want to get into
we won't
that.
address it, ladies and gentlemen, but you can put context clues together and kind of figure out what happened here.
No, you
Yeah.
can't. You don't know fucking anything. Shut
Well,
up, audience. You don't know what you're
you
talking
did say
about.
you raised your mailbox, so that's all I'm gonna say. A little context
I said
clues.
it as a meme. I didn't literally go out and fucking elevate my
Well,
mailbox, dude.
I know, but it's only funny because it's you know based off of something in reality. So
Anyway, yeah, let's move on.
anyways, so I still have a couple more questions about the server itself now that we've kind of gotten through the drama aspects of this. When did Imperator Space become so important to you? Obviously, that's a really important part of your legacy on the server. The big statue, Jesus statue, that's iconic with 2B2T. Didn't you build that yourself?
You're asking me, did I build the Jesus statue?
Did you
No,
build
I
it?
did
No,
not
somebody else
build the
did.
Jesus.
I thought so. Okay, I could
Dude.
have sworn you built it. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, you mean you're asking me about the time I griefed I-1, dude? Yeah, fucking, fucking Imperator's base. No,
Did
it
you get
wasn't
were
built by
you like
me at
originally
all.
invited to it, or did you get like
No,
force
no,
griefed?
no, no,
I
no.
have no clue about anything involving Imperators, so I need you to fill me in.
You want me to tell you a really good story? Actually, it involves Imperator's base, and it also involves Russia and how it's all connected. Literally,
All the they're all connected,
it's all connected.
bro. Not the Ender chest. Come on,
The Ender chest. It's all, I mean, seriously, this is an all connected thing. Do you want me to tell you
go
it? It's
ahead.
a
Go
good
ahead.
story. All right, so let's see. Back in 2015, mid 2015, obviously I'm friends with Tristan. He sends some picture on Skype by accident. It contains some coordinates of some like diamond block swastika or something, and then he immediately deletes it, but I saved it. Fast forward several months, we have a falling out for some stupid reason. I go to Imps, I tunnel there in one night straight. It's like 130,000 blocks in the nether. Really autistic. Gives you kind of a perspective of how autistic I was about the server back then. Anyway, so I arrive. It's Christmas Eve, and me and Frickin' start placing TNT at the foot of the Jesus statue. We blow it all up. And then, being the autistic person that I was back then, I decide I'm going to add insult to injury, and I'm also going to dox Tristan, even though his username is literally his real life name and all of his personal stuff is already completely public. I decided to post some link to some random website I found that has his account on it. Well, it turns out that the link that I posted contained a world download of Tristan's and his real life friends and Pyrobyte's master stash, the one on the Mushroom Island, and also contains some various other bases. So, January 2016, Imperator Teray shows up at my base with frickin' the Mesa. He 32Ks me. I'm dead. Then several months later, in March or something, I believe, this was after we griefed the lands, Kane's Law gives coordinates to Jack the Ripper of one of Tristan's master stashes, or the master stash, really. It turns out that Kane's Law looked at what I sent back in December 2015 and realized that it wasn't just a world download of imps, it also contained these other regions. And not only was it not a world download, but these files were taken directly from the server. And the reason they were taken directly from the server is because Tristan at that time had copied imps to the imps 2 location in November of 2015, which is when James Russell's and Kane's Law found imps. They found it before me. And Imperator was scared that they were going to blow it up, so he had Tristan use his access to the server to copy the regions to another location. So anyway,
Yeah. Do you think?
Kane's Law
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Kane's Law gives coordinates of the Master Stash to Jack the Ripper, and Jack shares it with some other people. They all go to the Master Stash and they steal all the illegals. That is where the 32Ks came from. The 32Ks that everybody was using back in 2019, that is the source. That's where they came from. Anyway, moving on. So things start to become, people become suspicious. They understand that Tristan has all this stuff. The stash is like located at y equals 0. It has glass windows into the void. So obviously he didn't place it there himself. He used world edit. So people are very suspicious. They're very confused. It's a scary time to be a 2v2T player, and then it turns out that the tyranny is a thing suddenly, which is what we used to call Nerds Inc. The tyranny of four faggots was the original name. It was me, Tristan, Talo, and Pop Bob. And we just went around griefing things, and then Clyde was introduced next. And we had access to a lot of things. Clyde and Tristan and Talo were all friends with the administrator on the server. They were friends with George Bush 420, who at that time outright owned the server. They had him on Facebook. Talo had the ability to restart the server at will. And we had end portals, we had numerous end portals encased in bedrock and stuff. And there's one image that's on that video, the day TBT almost died, that's my image actually. It's George Bush 420 flying over us, placing an end portal encased in bedrock. And that was just one of the many things that happened at that time. So I released that image because I was stupid, and people go crazy over it. They say, wow, the admin is actually being, controlled. And this is where that narrative came from, that like we somehow had access to the account. No, we didn't have access to it. We were friends with the admin. So anyway, all that stuff happens, and then the servers are really dying. This is when Constantium came into existence. Constantium was made by a 2v2T player to get out of this situation. So people start going to Constantium because James Russell's advertised it or something. And, the server is really down. Just a couple of people online in the mornings. And at this point, I believe it was Yellowstone Joe, but it might have been somebody else. Yellowstone Joe makes a Reddit post on r/Minecraft as a consequence of the low number of players on 2v2T. And guess who sees it? The Camping Rusher. The Camping Rusher sees it. He makes his video. And that's, all else is history. That's how it happened.
Yeah, and along the lines of Imperator's base, you said that it's been world edited once. What kind of led up to you guys finding that copy of Imps, and what was kind of the fallout afterwards?
So there was a player named Lane who was invited to Imperator's Base 2 by Oftopia, who shared coordinates with FitMC, who in turn shared coordinates with Orsund, who in turn shared coordinates with me in Hermetic Lock. It's that simple.
Yeah, and what
FitMC
was
leaked
kind of the
Imperator's Base 2.
process? What was kind of the process of actually getting there? I mean, did you guys have exact coordinates, or was it
Not
really?
for a while because FitMC wanted to be like really secretive about it or something. But obviously he wanted it blown up because that's content, free content for him. Um, so we had to like do some guessing games where we had to like go in specific ranges, and he would give us a range of coordinates, and it was just this whole thing for like about a month. And eventually, I guess FitMC gets tired of it or something, and then he just gives us the coordinates, and then we go there. We start blowing it up on like May 31st or something. I wanted to do it for June 1st, but we couldn't help ourselves. We got too excited.
Yeah, and
So,
like, what do you? I mean, do you think that like there are other copies of Imperator's base out there besides the one you guys drift?
no, Tristan's not smart enough to do that.
So you don't think that in the amount of time that he had access to those kind of abilities, he only made one?
I think he only made one. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the attention that this space in particular got. There was an entire gape there that he world edited in. It doesn't appear to me that there were multiple copies. It feels strange that there would have been multiple, and he goes to this one in particular, unless they had designated, like, this is going to be our first copy. But who really had the foresight back in 2015 to say, yeah, we're going to make multiple copies of this base because we feel like someone's going to find this base that's out at fucking 4 million, when at the time, 4 million, the highways didn't even reach 4 million. When I griefed Avalon back in November 2015, that was right along the negative Z highway. I had to dig there. The highway didn't even extend there. I was the one that first dug to negative Z equals 1 million because the highway didn't go there. And certainly the highway didn't go to anywhere near Imperators 2. So I don't think there are multiple copies. And, in addition to all that, we're talking about Tristan here. He's not exactly the smart guy. He's known for leaking things. He fucking leaked Imperator's Base 2 to the other members of Nerds Inc.
Yeah, and like after the grief of the clone, what was the conflict with Orson that was going on at the time? You obviously leaked the message logs between the both of you onto the masses. What was kind of the fire that lit that?
It was not the footage of imps, although I would have liked to have that footage That's not what caused it. Orson is I don't want to get into the drama. Same with Joey, but he how do I phrase this? He has a tendency to go behind people's backs and either share information or otherwise exhibit disloyalty towards them. And I was well aware at this point that he was doing that to pretty much everybody. And it was at a certain point, I think it was really the video that was the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. Because it seemed to me that he knew fully that he was not intending to ever give me the footage. And I thought that he had deliberately taken the footage because he understood the value of it and then was not going to share it. And there was a certain point when I was requesting the footage and he stopped responding to my requests. So I was pretty fed up with it. I had obviously cataloged everything that he'd said to me because he shared all sorts of, little details about his plans to take down specific people. I was well aware of the fact that he was going against his friends' backs. People like Ox22, Baba J, Liar, who were sympathetic towards him, at least partially at the time. He went behind their backs, and he went behind pretty much everybody else's back too, including mine. So I leaked those DMs as proof to everybody that their suspicions were correct. And it seems nothing has come of it. So, it's history.
Yeah, and like, what was some of the stuff that he was doing, like to mess with like Jerv and Ox and Baba and all that, to go behind their back? What was some of the stuff he was saying?
He claims Ox22 doxed him or something, which I don't believe is actually true. Aside from that, he was sharing his DMs with Ox to me. He was, basically writing to Ox specific things that I wanted him to say. I actually told him to inform Ox that he was looking for Imperator Space too, because I felt like that would be more loyal to his old friendships. I didn't want him to lose those friendships with Ox22 and Baba J and whatnot, because I felt like friendship is probably more important than griefing a base. And this is what I told both of them. I said, I don't want you guys to do this if you're putting any of your friendships on the line. And I thought that they understood that, but it turns out at least Orson did not.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a lot of cases, if you spent so much time looking for something like a copy of Imperator Space, and knowing that it's not legitimate, knowing that it's a copy, I feel like that would overpower a lot of the a lot of like relationships with other people like that. Um,
So let me
I
say
think
a
putting
couple
a
good
base
things
trace
about
between that
Orson.
is not a good idea in the first place. But
Let me say a couple good things about Orson so nobody gets the wrong idea here that I'm being biased in favor of Joey
oh
or
no, you're
something.
you're completely able to be as
I'll
biased
say
as
that
you want. This
I'm
is
not
this
interested in
is your
being biased.
interview.
I'm not interested in stepping on any toes anymore. This, it's an exhibition of how much I've really stepped away from the community. I'd rather just remain neutral, neutrally hated by every single person.
Well, you're doing a
um,
fantastic job.
I know, thank you very much. So, Orson, some good things about him. He's a really good socializer. He's really skilled at socializing. And I think he's good with his words. And obviously, he's a skilled programmer and all sorts of other things like that. He definitely has some skills at his disposal, and he's certainly made a name for himself in the same way that Joey has. So, good for him, I guess. Anyway, next topic.
Yes, yes, yes. Next topic. So, what's the story behind Mumega Base? How did you kind of get in and get inside that group, that base?
Yeah, so this is a real quick story. I logged into Optopia's account and blew it up.
Oh, nice, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, that's actually kind of a good segue to talk more about the auth exploit, because you actually have an interesting story about how that came about, and how you and someone from Macrocasm kind of discovered it.
Yeah, so it was this guy, this meth head named It's Young Daddy, who originally discovered it. He used to play on my old server, which I no longer am affiliated with at all. Um, and he discovered it, and we noticed that like there was something weird going on. We thought it was just some like weird quirk of old Minecraft, but as it turns out, Mojang did not ever disable the pre-UUID authentication servers. So before UUIDs were introduced back in like 2013, they had servers that just authenticated your username, and you could still send requests to those. That's how the auth exploit worked.
Wow, so
So
the only way you guys found it was through playing older versions.
Exactly, and using specifically a client from older versions that was designed specifically to send requests to that server.
Yeah, and like, do you guys think that there's any other like exploits that could come from like older versions of the game by playing older versions?
Um,
Or do you think that's kind of like a
Absolutely,
one-off? I mean, yeah. I
absolutely,
mean, if
absolutely.
there's always a way, there's always a chance.
Oh, I
You were
think there
saying
are
earlier.
absolutely many exploits, specifically for 1.12, which is, before Microsoft really came in with 1.13 and kind of fucked everything up or changed everything. 1.12, I'm sure, has various exploits that remain from many years ago.
Oh yeah, there's still stuff to this day that people are finding new ways to change up the game on a version that, I mean, to be honest, we've been on for 4 years now, probably over
I
that.
like that. I think that's a cool fact.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
want the
it's
server to
it's
update.
really neat. I mean, if it does update, there's going to be like a gazillion things to do. I feel like it's going to change so much. Just with the way that a lot of these new blocks aren't made in mind of a large scale. Like you think about blocks like campfires and stuff that have like intricate animations and like particle effects. Those can be like so easily just abused to lag
Yeah, I
people.
think those are tile entities or something. So if you stack those all in a chunk, you can probably produce some pretty bad consequences, FPS wise and TPS.
Yeah, it's just like to me, I really don't see to be running stably on any version past 1.12 because it seems like it's going to be way too labor intensive and too taxing on house to actually patch a lot of this stuff. And it's stuff that I really don't even think you theoretically could patch.
Yes, and personally, I feel like 1.12 is a fine version for the server. I know there are lots of people that think like, oh yeah, we got to update the server to 1.18. That
Yeah,
will
it'd be
bring
cool,
everybody
but
back.
nobody thinks
And
about the
I disagree with that.
repercussions.
I think it's the community. It doesn't matter what blocks you're using. It's always been the community. It doesn't matter that it's Minecraft. It could be another game entirely. But 2B2T has always been unique because of the people that played it,
Yeah,
and
speaking
that's something
of
that you can't
the
replicate.
speaking of the people that have played the server, you've been involved in a bunch of incursions over the years. How would
I
you
led five.
say? Yeah, led five. What's kind of been your involvement? What's the first incursion you've been involved with, and how have they kind of evolved over time?
Well, the first incursion I wouldn't say I was involved, but I was somebody that was killed during the second incursion. So that was really an interesting experience relative to the third and everything thereafter, because they didn't build anything. They kind of just came to spawn and started killing people. And then later on, I was briefly a member of the third incursion. I helped place some of the obsidian. I designed some pattern that I wanted them to use on Wrath, and it's in some of the world downloads, the final world downloads. But for most of the third incursion, I was against them with Taylor 112. The fourth incursion, I started the fourth incursion actually, and I started it before Rusher came actually because I felt like things were really boring and maybe we need an incursion to make things interesting. So I had this incursion base. Um, I don't know if you were there, but we had a bunch of people there that later on went to become part of the fourth incursion. And then we did the fourth incursion thing where we converged on the resistance base. We blew it up, and then later on, I was kicked out of the incursion for some reason I can't remember. And then I went to two incursion bases and blew them up. And then the fifth incursion, I started that. That was just my little project with the Fourth Reich. Laid the blueprints for the wall, which was the sixth incursion, which I did not start. That was started by Henry, I believe, or Sado. I think it was started by Sado actually. And then I was elevated to a leadership position, and it was my idea. The wall was my idea. So we just built off of the blueprints of the fifth incursion. We used some materials from the fifth incursion as well, and yeah, yeah, that was probably the best incursion. I don't think anybody disputes that. The sixth incursion rather was the best incursion of all time. And then the seventh incursion that was started by Henry, and I was elevated to a leadership position and kind of led that one more or less entirely from a certain point on. And that one is largely considered a failure. And I guess technically it is a failure. Yeah, because we didn't achieve what we wanted to do. I mean, even the sixth incursion is technically a failure. Every single incursion is technically a failure because we never 100% any of our projects. We didn't 100% the sixth incursion either, but we got pretty damn close, and we had a good time. And that's what I really think incursions are all about. So I would consider the seventh incursion, from my personal perspective, to be a success in that manner. Then I also led the eighth incursion, which I started, This was late 2019, and that's the last real official incursion, at least to my knowledge. There have been many clones and stuff, but it's never been something that includes the wider community like that one. That was the last one, and what that did was it laid the blueprints for the water cube, which the Infinity incursion, which was born out of the 8th incursion, later finished.
Yeah, and what do you think about some of these knockoff incursions that appeared in between that time, like the 10th incursion and all that stuff?
What do I think about it? I don't have an opinion. I just,
I mean, what do you think?
frankly, I don't even know who was in
they
there.
were serious, or
Oh,
are you
I'm
talking
sure they
about
were
Joey's
serious, and
incursion?
I'm sure they took themselves very seriously, but I certainly don't consider that like a canon part of 2BTT history. That's not a fucking real incursion. It's led by some new fag that nobody's ever heard of. Like Parthicus said one time, you need an old fag to add legitimacy to your event. And certainly these 10th incursion, 9th incursion, 100th incursion, they don't have any old fags. It's not legitimate.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So let's start
We're
moving on.
approaching the 1.5 hour mark.
Yeah, I
One
know.
and a
We're
half.
getting to the closing questions. We're getting there. Just had to go over the big meat of the interview, and address a couple questions I was foolish enough not to ask the first time. So, after over 8 years on the server, why do you still feel so passionate about the community and like playing a part in the evolving history? I mean, has that drive diminished or increased?
It's diminished significantly, but I'd say that, and I don't mean to be like bragging or anything here, but I think that I'm one of like just a handful of people that knows a fuck ton about the server. And rather than allowing all that knowledge to kind of go to waste, I'd rather put it to some use, like on the wiki or something. And I've been working with the wiki, as you know. I drafted new rules and stuff, but to be honest with you, they're kind of moving at a snail's pace, and I'm not very pleased with how things are going. But aside from that little project, I don't really participate much in the community anymore. I, as you know, I created pre-June Discord twice, and that was one of the last things I did community-wise on the server.
Yeah, and like, where do you see the server going from here? Within the next
Down the
year,
shitter,
really?
down the toilet. Yeah, it's
Like
getting worse
culture-wise,
and
you think it's
worse.
just gonna get worse and worse?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
What about update-wise? Do you see when do you predict the server might encounter some sort of new update news?
I think when the server dies, when the population decreases significantly.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, in closing statement, closing question. What is the thing that you probably regret the most out of your entire time on 2B? Something that if you could go back in time, you would change, like undeniably.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a good question. Probably doxing people. I think if I could go back in time and not dox anybody, at least in 2018. I don't know if I would go back all the way to 2015 when I didn't really do it, but in 2018 when I started behaving that way, yeah, I'd go back then and I'd probably change that because in retrospect, it was just a very inappropriate thing to do, and it really it's not something you can easily recover from. Like when I used to host a server, there were various YouTubers that I had contact with, and some of them, like Barondome, refused to log in, not because he didn't like the server or something, but because he was afraid that I was going to dox him from his IP address or something. And that's not really something I needed or wanted to deal with. And obviously, yeah, in retrospect, it was just a poor decision on my part. I took things too far. I was too invested, as were many other people, and yeah, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, and do you have any kind of closing statements? Anything you want to say before we round this out? Anything you want to promote?
I want to promote the fact that Sir underscore Castic is a fake old fag. I just want to give him a shout out and say that you're a fucking new fag, man, and you're just a faggot in general. And anything else that I want to say? Uh, I can't think of anything in particular. Do you have any final questions?
No, that's really about it. I think this was very worthy of removing the first interview. So guys, after this interview comes out, the first episode will be out for only 24 more hours. So watch it while you can, and then I'm dumping it. It's gone. It's erased. It's your last. This is your last chance. If you're watching this, this is your last chance.
Go download it and upload it to your channel because he's
Yeah,
giving you
yeah,
24 hours to do
exactly.
so.
Go download it and re-upload it because yeah, it'll be gone soon. That's as part of the terms of this interview. I signed a blood oath.
Pointlessly, you might as well just get rid of that now because he told them all to go download it. So
I mean,
it is what it
I
is.
mean, it's up to their discretion. I'm just letting you guys know it's going down soon. So if you're a fan, go give it a watch. Anyways, that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Jared, for coming back on the show.
Yep.
Glad to catch up and shoot the shit. So yeah, later. Signing out.